Time now to take another look at the morning papers. Here with me reviewing them this morning are the broadcaster and commentator Alex Andreou and the political commentator Benedict Spence. So welcome back for the third time lucky. Well, it was lucky the last time as well, actually. It was all been marvellous. But let's dive into a different selection this hour. And Alex, you picked out the front page of The Times to kick us off. And their headline is Civil Service beats wage freeze by over-promoting. So what do they mean by that?
So what they mean is that because quite a lot of senior staff is being lost and there's been a pay freeze for such a long time, really since 2010, that a lot of bosses are coping with that by promoting people to the band above where they would normally be, so that they get a sort of pay rise that way. I mean, this is the Institute for Government that's published the study, and it is a little bit chicken and egg, because it could also be that losing senior staff means that people need to be promoted. As a former civil servant, I can tell you it's a very hierarchical structure. Like, a department literally cannot function without a grade 5. There's things you can't sign off on without the right seniority present. And so the moment a grade 5 departs, a grade 6 has to be temporarily promoted to cope with that gap, as it were. And so it could be that it's the loss of senior people that's driving the promotions, or it's the promotions driving the loss of the senior people. It's very difficult to know which. But it's an interesting story because, you know, we were talking about brain drain and sort of retention in other areas, in the police, in the NHS. You know, and it is a theme that's running through every aspect of the state at the moment, that after really 13 years of belt tightening, it just feels like everything is coming apart at the seams.
But when it comes to the civil service, I mean, this government has made it clear that there's been more criticism, hasn't there, of civil servants? And is there a feeling that they do want to get numbers down anyway and make it more efficient?
I think that there are a lot of very valid criticisms of the civil service in terms of its efficiency, how it does work. I think that there has been also a massive sort of culture clash between this government, various iterations of this government, and the civil service, borne out by frustration, perhaps feeling that they aren't all on the same page, or frustration maybe at the mechanisms of government. But I think broadly, because of course we also mentioned the NHS, we mentioned policing, what you're seeing is what happens when you have flatlined growth. Ultimately, everything is powered by money. If you don't have money, you can't pay people enough, you can't get enough workers in, you can't properly remunerate people, people will look to better themselves elsewhere. The key theme about the last 13 years is completely flatline growth, whereas somebody put it the other day, the UK has been experimenting with degrowth, which is something that has been touted as a potential future ideology, and look how it's gone. It's not sustainable long term. I understand that people will be looking to things like services and wanting to prop them up, but ultimately you can only do these things when you do have growth. You can only have a functioning civil service if you have the money to do so. You can only reform the civil service. Ironically, you can only sort of slim it down and improve it if you have the resources to do it. And what we're seeing is a government that has not got the resources, largely as a result of its own policies.
And its support. That's the important bit. We were talking about this in the green room, that to reform the civil service, the people who will be delivering that reform are civil servants. You can't come in and antagonize everyone that works for you and then expect them to deliver your policies. It doesn't work like that.
Turn around to a senior civil servant to go, well, you're rubbish at your job, but these people are worse, so I want you to sack them first, and then I'm going to sack you. You can see why it doesn't inspire the greatest morale.
I'm impressed by all the highbrow conversations you're having in the green room. I'm shallow in my time off air.
We had plenty of those too.
Okay, fair enough then. And dogs overeating at Christmas. You've done all that already. Okay, let's move back to The Guardian now, shall we? And this page 8. And this was Emily Thornberry, Labour's Emily Thornberry, saying that a May election was Westminster's worst case secret, I should say.
Worst kept secret, yes. This sort of following hot on the heels of the announcement that the budget spring statement will be March the 6th. And this idea that the government are going to roll out a load of ideas to try to wow us, shock and awe tactics, and then very quickly say, but you can only have these things if you vote for us really, really quickly, otherwise the deal is off the table. I was actually speaking via WhatsApp to somebody in the Tory party who was saying, yes, it is likely to happen, but then actually there is a conflicting line of thinking within the party, which is actually this is a really bad idea because it's not giving them enough time for any policies that they do bring forward to sort of filter through. If they want to get the idea of the Rwanda plan or small boats across to the public because it hasn't done particularly well, they need to give themselves more time, and that therefore if they go to the polls in May, the public will have the image of them having failed on this. So it's a gamble basically, but this is the two competing schools of thought. Do you want to sort of seize the initiative and say, well, we're going to do it now, or do you want to give yourself enough time to try to see the benefits of your policies trickle through, but risk becoming a bit of a lame duck if it doesn't work, in which case you're absolutely toast? But the Tories would say, look at our polling, we're toast either way at the moment.
Well, yes, and Labour would, they could say, let's build up the idea of a May 2024 election, and then if it doesn't happen, we can say you're scared. So it's probably in Labour's interest to talk up that possibility as well. Take us to the front of the eye next. This is Get On With It. Johnson hits out at Sunak over nuclear power delays.
Yeah, do you remember him, Boris Johnson? No, me neither. This is a very unfortunate story whenever we talk about nuclear power, because nuclear power is the future to a net, it's the key to a net zero future for a country like us, where we do not have the potential to wheel out solar power and where actually the wind is very inconsistent. This is something that should have been done decades ago. We should have rolled out a new series of next generation nuclear power stations. We haven't. We're still prevaricating over it, even as France is able to take 70% of its energy from the nuclear power stations that it has built. Boris Johnson has come and said that Rishi Sunak is sort of kicking his heels, he's not doing it fast enough. Thanks very much, Boris Johnson. You were Prime Minister for however long and you didn't exactly speed up the process. This is a rare intervention of a sort from Boris Johnson into policy. The problem is Sunak just doesn't really have the time. This is a policy that if we do see the benefit, it would be 10 years down the line. But of course, we all remember Nick Clegg saying, well, we're not going to build nuclear power stations because they won't come online for another 10 years. It's that kind of short-termist thinking that has got us into this situation right now.
Okay, and Alex, take us to the Guardian and this story about Donald Trump and Home Alone 2, which weirdly I was watching with my son just the other day, actually.
It's really funny, this story. I will read you the quote from Donald Trump and you'll get the gist of it from that. I was very busy and didn't want to do it. They were very persistent. I agreed and the rest is history. That little cameo took off like a rocket and the movie was a big success. So this is basically Donald Trump claiming the success of the Home Alone franchise was down to his cameo in the second one.
And he said he was begged to take part, whereas...
Yes, different story from the filmmakers. They say basically he said to them they could only use the plaza if he was in the film. So basically he barged his way into the movie. One of those sounds a lot like Trump, and I shall let your viewers decide which is the more...
He also had a cameo in Sex and the City. He didn't say anything in it, but a couple of seasons in, so maybe we can credit him with the success of that show as well.
The yin and yang, I think.
Exactly.
Let's leave it there. But Benedict and Alex, lovely to see you both this morning. Thanks so much for taking us through the papers. We do appreciate it. And we've got lots coming up here on Sky News at breakfast.